chug, 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 chug,
Hello and welcome back to the Wizard Staff. I'm your host Blake.
And I'm Guy.
And we are two drunk novices who like to talk about EDH. We drink and swear, so you have been warned. Please drink responsibly when you're playing children's card games. Today we have a final... We're ending a series. This is our mono red pet cards. Woo!
Woo!
We're finally ending this series. I'm so happy.
Well, unless if we can come up with some kind of other top 5 pet card related, but this is the end to the color and colorless cycle.
Yeah, maybe they'll finally come out with purple, and then we'll do that. That's
Disgusting.
not going to happen. Yeah. Just to clarify for all of you listeners, this is not a top 10 list, so fuck off. This is what we like. We know that these cards might be bad, but we personally love them. So if you want to hear about us talk deeply and passionately about these cards, you've come to the right place, because this is red. And in honor of this mono red pet cards episode, Guy, what are we drinking?
Well, Blake, tonight we are drinking the classiest of drinks that one can drink. Red wine. Woo!
In a can.
From a can, yes. Well, I feel like that's kind of the more hipster way of doing things, you know?
Yeah.
It's just the evolution of alcohol.
Yeah, like LaCroix and like White Claw, like everything's just like fancier and like pretentious in a can.
I mean, it's also kind of like maybe you don't want to take a full bottle of wine to the park, so you take your can of wine. Just as good.
It's a lot easier to conceal too, yeah.
That is true. If you want to take it into the movies.
God. Alright. Stop giving our listeners ideas. We're going to get them in trouble. Alright, so do you want to talk about, like, red in case people don't know what red is in Magic?
My mouth is full of spaghetti at the moment.
You son of a bitch.
So, it's all you, Blake.
It's all you son of a fuck. Alright, so intro to red. You just join in whenever you're ready. Red is the color of emotion, impulse, and action. Red sees things in terms of doing, not thinking, and would sooner act now than wait and think about its actions. Red likes to do things as quickly and with as much power as possible, heedless of danger or complication. In its eyes, its actions are unrestricted and free. To that end, Red cares less for slowness or control and would rather just do stuff. Red employs damage and emphasizes damage through direct means, much greater than by creatures or far greater than technical spells. Red opposes white because white begets the color control that red spurns. Red opposes blue because blue rejects blue's rejection of the irrational is its systematic enemy, basically. Like, at its best, red is...
Yeah, so at its best,
free-spoken.
red is independent and free-spoken.
Fuck you.
At worst, it is dangerous and rash.
Stealing my thunder with the last goddamn sentence.
Don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, I think a good example of kind of like how red is often opposite of blue is looting, which I've explained a couple of times before on the podcast. But so when you loot, you typically draw and discard, but with red you tend to discard then draw. With blue you draw then discard, so it's more about the emotion of I just need to draw cards, and it's irrational thinking, whereas blue you're gaining knowledge and then discarding what you don't need. So good example of how it differs, or how emotion versus intelligence, how they're not often the same. Some popular game mechanics for red is combat, direct damage, so that's typically referred to as burn, fire breathing effects, which appeared on the Shivan Dragon one of the original Magic cards, where you pay 1 red mana to give a creature +1/+0. Haste, land and artifact destruction, and randomness. Yes, these are the typical things you would see in red.
Alright, so we're going to move on, and we're going to talk about the pet cards. So we tried to choose cards that were like less than $25, and I know we're actually going to stick to that this time. You can't yell at me this time, guy. I followed the rules.
Well,
that we
good,
made for
Blake.
ourselves.
Well, good. I'm glad that you respect the rules.
Yeah. Also, I didn't really say what I was drinking because I couldn't find, going back a second, I couldn't find your beverage, like, and so I ended up getting something similar. And I think now we're even because previous episode, you couldn't find my drink, so now we're even, right?
I mean, I know that you couldn't find my specific brand of red wine, but I feel like at the store you could have bought any bottle of red wine.
But I wanted to get a can because you got a can.
Oh, okay, I see. Well, then
I was
appreciate
trying.
that.
I was trying.
I was trying to.
I know. We're both trying our best.
Yes.
Okay.
That's all anyone could ask for.
Yeah. So, anyways, back on track. So, some examples of red cards. There's Chaos Warp, Vandal Blast, Blasphemous Act, Faithless Looting, Gamble, Siege Gang Commander, Impact Tremors, Blood Moon, Outpost Siege, Reverberate, Wheel of Fortune, Earthquake, Fervor, Empty the Warrens, Fireball. These are all kind of cards that you think of when you hear red. And like game-winning red cards, there's only one that I could think of, Guy. Let me know what you think. But I could only really think of Insurrection. Like, it's known for ending games pretty well.
I agree. I think it's a card that can definitely just like turn the tides really quickly. It's kind of like on that Expropriate level where, well, maybe Expropriate is, they're both on a very strong power level for their high mana cost, and I would say that like red, that would be red's like Tooth and Nail, Expropriate. I don't know what would be like the black equivalent. Do you think? Or there's probably
There's a lot of black spells that can end the game.
Yeah, I guess like Doomsday, except that's not as high of mana cost.
Yeah, or Sanguinate. I think I'd have to listen to our mono black pet cards. I'm sure we said it in that one.
Yeah, though, out of curiosity, because this came up when I was building my red deck, my Perforos deck, which you guys are going to get to know really closely through this episode, but I did not include Blood Moon. And Blake, would you say that Blood Moon is kind of a red staple, or is it just very situational, do you think?
I'd say it's like a mono red staple.
You would say it's a mono red staple?
Yeah, because a lot of mono red decks usually aren't that fast, and even the ones that are fast still want to slow all their opponents down to their level. I'm thinking of like Krenko Mob Boss and Zada Hedron Grinder. Even those super fast mono red decks want to. I mean, there's literally no downside for you to play Blood Moon. You might as well punish all your opponents.
Okay, I mean, that is a very good point. Because when I was building my deck, and the audience will get to learn, but I didn't see it as fitting into like the theme or the... I didn't think it was like super necessary for my deck, because I felt my deck was able to, since it has cards that are just pretty low mana cost to begin with, it felt relatively fast. But
yeah.
So when someone said like, "Oh, why don't you run Blood Moon?" and I was like, "Well, it just doesn't fit the idea of the deck." But then they said, "But it's a mono red staple." I was like, but is it? I don't know. So to me, I guess maybe this was an instance where I didn't think it was, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's kind of getting into a different discussion of like staples in general, but like, yeah, I agree. It doesn't really synergize with your Perforos deck, but it's just, I don't know. It's really good.
It is a very good card.
Yeah, we're not gonna deny that, and it doesn't punish you. It only punishes your opponents. Anyway, we should get to the main topic of this episode, though.
All right. Well, why don't you start us off, Blake?
Okay, so my number 5 is Dualcaster Mage. It is a 1 red creature human wizard 2/2 with flash that says when it enters the battlefield, copy target instant or sorcery spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. So there are many red cards that copy instants and sorceries like Twin Cast and Reverberate. So you're like, why? There's lots of these cards that do this effect. Why is this your mono red pet card? So the story behind this is my friend Park, who's been on the podcast before. He was in our Stacks episode. Go listen to it. It's good. He built a Zada Hedron Grinder deck, and he was playing it, and then he went, oh, I guess I'll do this. And so he cast Dualcaster Mage, and then cast Heat Shimmer. And then it's basically a 2-card combo, which ultimately makes infinite hasty Dualcaster Mages that can swing in for infinite damage and just killed everyone. And he explained to us, like, immediately after he killed us all, that he, like, made the deck as optimally as possible. And then, like, I think 2 months later, he was like, oh, I guess these 2 cards that I already had in the deck, like, made this 2-card combo. And I immediately was just like, oh yeah, I accidentally have 2-card combos in my decks all the time too. And then just like, it was just with such sarcasm that everyone was like laughing.
I think this is a good example. I think this is a good example of, you know, what it means to us to have pet cards, because you're right, there are a lot of cards that, you know, have this copy spell ability, but this is one that's special to us, or special to you specifically. And yeah, you know, that's a good story. I mean, it is a strong card regardless, or it can be in this instance. So, you know.
Yeah, I just find it funny because it's like, you know, a lot of discussion about 2-card combos. It's always the same. It's like, oh, like, that's just like too easy. You just win the game. And then like, he would just like, I found out 2 months after I already made the deck that like apparently this was in the deck, and like this is the first time I got it to work, and it was just really like this. When does that ever happen? It's just really funny.
I mean, yeah, there are. I see stuff like that happen sometimes on Facebook where I'm in a EDH group, but they never say like 2-card combos. It's more like, oh, I discovered this 4 to 5 card combo that set my deck off. But like, you know, that's a little different. But because 2-card combos, I mean, 2-card combos, it's the lowest combo you can get.
Yeah, basically.
All right, my turn. My number 5 is Norin the Wary. He costs 1 red. He's a legendary creature, human warrior. 2/1 power toughness. He has, when a player casts a spell or creature attacks, exile Norin the Wary. Return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So you might be thinking like, what the fuck? What? Why is this here? Like, he doesn't do much himself.
Trash.
Yeah, I mean, in most cases you would think, yeah, this is trash, but he is an enabler to my Perforos combo, since he pretty much flickers in and out almost every turn because someone's going to cast a spell or someone's going to attack me. So he'll just go out and then in, which triggers Perforos' ability to then deal 2 damage. So normally when I get Norin the Wary out, he and Perforos together will be able to do about 6 damage to each opponent while I'm not even like playing any spells, which is pretty good. and it definitely is annoying to my opponents, and it's really hard to get rid of Norn the Wary. Like, you gave a few examples here, Blake. It's like Sensei's Divining Top, that's one of those cards that's just almost impossible to get rid of. Not impossible, but really, really hard.
Yeah. It's like you target it and it's like, all right, in response, it gets rid of itself. Mm-hmm. Like, nice.
Yeah. So I was actually really curious too, because he is a legendary creature, which you're like, oh, is there a way you could build a deck around him? And there is, and it's just kind of like trying to get the most out of his like enter and re-enter ability, where he can like trigger cards to make tokens, or he'll just trigger other things, which gives you a good board presence while you're not playing the game, and then it comes back to you, and then you have a ton of new stuff on your board.
Yeah, like this kind of reminds me of like Perplexing Chimera, where it's like, and since he's Divining Top, like these 3 cards all are really difficult to get rid of. And is that part of the reason that this is like your pet card? It's like, it's almost impossible to get rid of.
It's almost impossible to get rid of, and it just is such a huge impact on the game. Well, Perforos is the one dealing damage, but the fact that like Norn the Wary is enabling Perforos to deal the damage so easily and getting quite a bit, like especially in like, I've played in like 5-player games before, and that's it only just gets better with the more people that you play, because you go around and play with, 5 people, that's 4 opponents and myself. Like, this is including myself for when it's my turn, because I'll play a spell, he'll go away.
It's just one of those cards that gets better with the more players there are.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. I feel that. Speaking of cards that get better the more players there are, I'm going to talk about my number 4. It's Mana Barbs. It is 3 and a red enchantment that says whenever a player taps a land for mana, Mana Barbs deals 1 damage to that player. So most players agree that using Burn as a win con in EDH is considered pretty difficult. It's not impossible. But it's not impossible, but I'd say it's pretty difficult. You want to talk about this? This is a good time to talk about it.
I'll let you finish talking about your card first.
Okay, thank you. So basically, all EDH decks use lands, even if they're using low CMC Mana Rocks or the Mana Dorks. They still have to play those lands, usually, to get to those Mana Rocks and Mana Dorks. So it's like lands are a like literal pillar to everything in Magic. So it's like they're always gonna be burned every time they tap their land. And especially when this card like sticks around for a couple turns, it's like they're just taking 5 and then 6 and then 7, and they're like, how did I get down to 20 life so fast? And I'm just like, tap tap, and they're like, oh my god, that's annoying. And I'm like, yep. And people start to get nervous. It's one of the best feelings when like they're like, I need to tap my lands to play things, but it's killing me, and they're like, no. And I'm just kind of like sitting in my chair like smug, like looking at them. Like, it gives me power. I like it.
Blake, that's unfair.
Shut the fuck up.
No, I mean, it's a card, and that's its effect. It's not like you're abusing it in any way, but no. So to go off of like what you were talking about, how burn is really hard to win off, I think you are right. How if you just want to burn the traditional way in playing like target lightning bolt, lightning vortex, like all those burn spells, like yeah, that's really difficult. But if you're trying to like, because essentially what my Perforos deck is a burn deck, but I find it fairly easy to just be able to do as much damage as I can because of his ability. So it really, I guess it just depends who you want to use as your commander, but I can't see like anyone picking someone other than Perforos for a burn deck.
Have you ever played against an Omnath deck?
Locust of Rage or...
Locust of Rage, the green and red one.
No, I have not.
All right, well, maybe I'll talk to you after this episode, but like that deck is probably like the one, like one of the few burn decks in EDH that will actually like do well in EDH, because it's like Park plays it and it's really optimized and it's really good, and he'll just kill everyone really, really easily. Like
I'd love to play a game. I'd love to play a game where we have my burn deck and his burn deck, and then we just watch the world burn.
You're the worst kind of people. You'll be happy because Perforos is in his 99.
Oh, good. Super extra damage.
So he plays an elemental, and then he'll like have 2 enchantments that say they each deal the creature that he just made, the 5/5 elemental, will deal damage from its power to target player. So he'll just have both of those, and then Perforos, and then he'll deal like 12 damage, and then he'll play like 5 more lands and deal like another, like, I don't know, 60 damage. And it's great.
Nice.
So
Respect.
we should move on. Yeah.
All right. Scourge of the Throne. 4 RR creature dragon. 5/5 flying, because almost all dragons have flying. It has dethrone, so whenever this creature attacks the player with the most life or tied for the most life, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. And whenever Scourge of the Throne attacks for the first time each turn, if it attacks the player with the most life or tied for the most life, untap all attacking creatures. After this phase, there's an additional combat phase. So why did I get into Magic? Fucking dragons. Not to fuck dragons. Not to fuck dragons, but because fucking dragons are awesome. They are huge creatures. Yes, they are huge creatures, and they are just awesome to like beat a person down with. So this was definitely one of the first additions that I had to my Dragon deck, which rest in peace, because it's a little like it needs some tweaks. I want to get it. I want to now that I know how to play the game, I want to maybe go back and like add some cards, but that's besides the point at the moment. So this was one of the first like cards I added to that deck. It's one of those expensive cards that I bought, since it was, you know, that was like what I was into with getting out of Yu-Gi-Oh! And just fucking dragons. And
do you remember?
Yeah.
Do you remember how much it is? Is it under $25?
I checked, and it's still under 25. I think it's sitting around 24. It's only been printed once, and it's in the conspiracy packs, and I believe it's a mythic rare. So it's not like a easy card to get. So like I can check like really quickly right now, but like I remember it still being within our price range.
Okay, because I really wanted to be like, are you sure? And then you're like, oh, it's $26. And I'm like, bitch, I got you.
I mean, if we go $1 or $2 over, like...
No, I'm going to still hold it over you.
Market price for this card, $21.
Fuck. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, so fuck you.
Okay. I'll just cry in the corner now. All I'll really say about this card is like, yeah, I'll never trust anyone who doesn't like dragons. It's like you have to be a sociopath if you don't like dragons. Am I right?
Pretty much. I mean, this was on the cards, because you gave me like a list of cards, and you said like, Guy, these are the cards you should add. This was like,
I remember that.
This was number 2 on your list of like most, because you ranked them like most important Dragon Lord
Right.
Dramoka, I believe, was the most important that you said to add, but yeah, this card is awesome. I don't run it in Perforos because, again, I don't think it necessarily fits the theme, but
It doesn't.
with at least the Dragon, definitely.
Yeah. I'm glad you enjoy my contribution and my suggestions. All right, so my number 3 is Spell Shock. It is 2 and a red for an enchantment. Whenever a player casts a spell, Spell Shock deals 2 damage to that player. So, lands are important to Magic. Spells are important to Magic. So I'm gonna punish that too. So, people when I play this, like especially my friends, they'll be like, "Oh, what are you playing that card for? That card's trash." And I'll be like, okay. And then they'll cast like 4 spells in a turn, and they're like, I just took 8 damage. What the fuck? And I'm just like, you still think it's trash? And they'll just kind of like sit there silently, and I'm just like, yeah, that's what I thought. Yes, I know that this affects you too, but there are ways to make the damage like ×2 or ×4 or ×8 to your opponents. Like there's Furnace of Wrath, and there's Dictate of the Twin Gods, and then there's Angrath's Marauders, and then you can do what I do, which is play Gisela and make everything asymmetrical, where you take half damage and your opponents take double. So that's how you kind of split everything.
Yeah, but that's a super specific situation.
Yeah, but this is my super specific situation.
Yeah, I'm not saying that, like, you know, it isn't your super specific situation, but it's not like there's a ton of cards that do what Gisela does. I think
Yeah,
there's probably only Gisela who does what Gisela does.
yeah. Like, I recognize that, like, this shouldn't go in, like, most decks. The only reason I have it in, like, any deck of mine is because it's Gisela as the commander, and I can make my damage asymmetrical.
Right.
But, it's great. It's like they start taking 8 damage every turn, and they're trying to like get to their win condition, and they're like at 16 life, and they're like, fuck. And then I instant speed like give them another like 8 damage, and then they're like really like nervous, and then they start making mistakes, and then they're like, no, I didn't mean to do that, and I'm just like, ha ha ha. Fuck.
I'm glad that we do these kind of things, because this is a card that I also feel like, you know, I would want to play this because it's dealing damage. I would be a little scared for myself about how would I try and prevent it. I would then just try and focus on trying to get maybe 1 or 2 creatures, or casting 1 spell that would get a lot of tokens in. That way I can trigger Perforos a lot, deal some damage, pass the turn, and just let my opponents play as many spells as they need, or, you know, just slow them down. So then it's just all about me trying to deal damage to them.
Because again, it's like whoever plays the most, generally whoever makes the most mana and casts the most spells is winning in EDH. And so Spell Shock is like, all right, you're gonna cast a lot of spells, well, you're gonna take 2 damage every time you do, and that's gonna add up, and you're gonna die really fast if you don't win that turn. And that's exactly what happens. So I love it. And yeah, that's all that really needs to be said. Also, the art kind of looks like evil Ryu from Street Fighter. I don't know if anyone else gets that reference, but yeah.
We'll include a picture, so don't worry.
Mm-hmm.
All right. My number 3 is Balefire Dragon. So it's another dragon. This one's awesome. I mean, all dragons are awesome.
All dragons are awesome.
5 RR creature dragon. 6/6 flying. Whenever Balefire Dragon deals combat damage to a player, it deals that much damage to each creature that player controls. So, again, fucking dragons. This is a pretty good single sideboard wipe if you can get the damage in, and I mean, good chance, because like it's a flying dragon. Goes up against, you know, a lot of decks that play small tokens. I've played against, you know, just those vampire decks like the Edgar Markov, and they'll have like a ton of vampires, a lot of small vampires, maybe a couple big ones, but most of the time, like, hit, boom, horde wipe, gone. It's pretty nice because it's single-sided, or it's at least one opponent. The art is super sick, and I wouldn't say that this is the most synergistic of what Purphoros is trying to do. Like, if I really wanted to make Purphoros like optimal, this would be one card I would take out. But since it's a dragon and it's awesome and it deals a lot of damage, like, why not just throw it in there? The other example that I kind of had was like Udvari Hellkite, like, came close to kind of replacing Balefire Dragon, since that creates more dragons. But I don't have a ton of dragons in the deck to begin with, so it's a little higher CMC. And since I like Balefire Dragon more, and this is my pet cards episode, and this is like what I want to run for fun, I chose Balefire Dragon. Drop the mic. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, like, this is honestly like one of the few dragons that I actually start to get scared of when I see someone play, because I'm just like, oh god, like, if they get to swing with that creature, they're just gonna like nuke the board, and no one's gonna have, and it's gonna be a repeatable nuke, and no one's gonna have creatures basically most of the time. And I'm just like, oh god, this is such a good card. And like that Udvari Hellkite, I'm just like, oh, this is gonna get really bad really fast.
I mean, it's a single, so as long as the player doesn't hit you, Blake, I feel like you don't have as much have to have as much to worry about. But I understand, like, if it's not something you're prepared to deal with, it can be very terrifying.
Yeah, well, like, a lot of people aren't prepared to deal with it. That's what I'm saying.
And that's bad deck building.
Yeah, I guess. That's true. Alright, so my number 2, we're getting up there, is Stolen Strategy. It is 4 and a red for an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of each opponent's library. Until the end of turn, you may cast non-land permanents from among those exiled cards. You may spend mana as though were mana of any color to cast those spells. So, worst case scenario, you spend like too much mana for like really slow advantage, and sometimes your opponents reveal lands, and it really, really sucks. Yeah. So, but besides that, there's also, like, this is kind of where you get into like Red's randomness factor, and like best case scenario, this hits like really good stuff out of your opponent's libraries, like Demonic Tutor, or Dig Through Time, or Cultivate, and it kind of like allows you to play really powerful effects outside of the color pie, which is pretty good, I'll say. Yes, I know you have to still pay the mana for those spells. It's not like Atali Primal Storm where you can just cast those cards for free. But if I'm playing like Mono Red or even Boros, and I cast like Stolen Strategy, and on my next turn I get a Demonic Tutor, like, hell yeah, I'm gonna be happy paying that 2 mana for like a tutor effect of any card. Like, yeah, I put it into my hand. Yeah, I'm gonna be happy. And I don't know, it's just, I like it. It doesn't go in like really powerful decks, but I just enjoy it. Like, I know a lot of people will be saying like, well, you want to focus on your own deck strategy. You don't want to be playing cards from your opponent's library. That's just like, then you're just hoping to hit good stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I am hoping to just hit good stuff. So what? Whatever. This is the way I want to play. Come at me.
Yeah, I mean, worst case scenario, kind of like I've written, but you're just exiling opponent's lands, which can, suck. I mean, you can get those good, tutor cards. How often how often do you think you like get a card that you benefit from? How off like how high of a ratio is it that you get a card off of this stolen strategies that you benefit from in the end?
Okay, that's kind of an interesting question because it's like 25% of the time I'd say it's good for me, but I'd also say like almost half the time there's at least one card that's being exiled from my opponent's library that I'm glad that they don't have. Like, especially if I'm playing like the mono green player and I exile the Crater of Behemoth, I'm just like, I don't care that I didn't get anything else from the other two players. I'm just glad you didn't get the Crater Hoof and that's exiled now.
So, but that's still a benefit to you, and it's also a benefit to the table that you exiled the Crater Hoof Behemoth, because that's a strong card. So, I'd say maybe a little more than 25% of the time, I guess, is...
Yeah, a little bit more.
So 25% of the time, it directly benefits just you. Maybe like from 25 to maybe 40%. I'm just making up numbers here. It benefits like the whole table.
Yeah, I'd say.
Okay.
Again, it's okay. There, like when it comes to Red's randomness, there's like a fine balance between like, okay, it's just random trash value versus, okay, it's random. What are we gonna get? And I think that's why people like cards like Atali, Primal Storm, and Stolen Strategy, because it's like there's enough like power level in those cards to like actually create excitement as to, oh, what's everyone gonna flip? Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
okay.
I like it.
All right. Well, then moving on to my number 2, we have Empty the Warrens.
Oh, God.
It's 3 in red, sorcery. Create 2 1/1 red goblin creature tokens. But it has Storm.
Fuck you.
So when you cast this spell, you copy it for each spell cast before this turn. Man, do I wish it were an instant, because...
Oh, God.
Man, oh man, that would be great. But it's not. So it's definitely a card that you have to like try and think of like how to best use the amount of mana that you have to then play it at the end, because then it'll trigger a bunch of times and then just deal a ton of damage with Perforos. I think the most that I've ever been able to do is 32 damage with this card and Perforos.
That's still a lot.
And Panharmonicon, because Panharmonicon then doubled Perforos' triggers. So, but yeah, 32 is a lot, because that just kills, like, considering that if no one is playing like a life gain strategy, that just kills everyone. Like, yeah. But at that point when I did that, I only had one opponent left. So it was kind of overkill to like do that much damage to him, but I had to like just be sure, because I was like, no way am I just gonna like not let, because then I created 16 goblins and wait, no, I created 8 goblins, so I had a ton of cards to like block for me, which triggers Perforos, so 8 times 2 is 16, and then Panharmonicon is doubles that, so it's 32 damage. But yeah, it was just a card. It's always a card that I'm happy to see. If I open it in my beginning hand, I'm like, oh yes, so I'm just gonna keep this hand and wait for the perfect time, because this is like the game ending card in my deck.
Is it all? Would you almost call it a win condition?
With Perforos, yes. In most other decks, I mean, maybe. I mean, if you have Crankle Mob Boss and you're just trying to play a bunch of goblins, I guess. But, like, this card is a win condition in my deck, for sure. Like, if I play this, I am probably about to win.
Yeah. I will say that, like, like, I was thinking it's one of the best Storm cards in EDH. Like, there's a couple other ones, but like this is pretty much up there with like the power level of Storm.
Yeah, I mean, for the value that you're getting of 4 mana to potentially create maybe like 10 creatures, mind blowing. Yeah.
God, Storm is great.
Storm.
It's a great mechanic, Storm Area 51.
Storm.
So we're gonna move on to our number 1. It took us a long time, but we've finally arrived. All right, so my number 1 is Stranglehold. It is 3 in a red for an enchantment that says your opponents can't search libraries. If an opponent would begin an extra turn, that player skips that turn instead. So, if you listen to our mono blue pet cards episode, then you know I like Mindlock Orb, which says all players can't search libraries. But this is even better because it's asymmetrical. You can still tutor, but your opponents can't. You could still take extra turns, but your opponents can't.
Yeah, red's really well known for that.
Well, actually it is, but like, is it decks? Yeah, those take a lot of extra turns, man.
Okay. Yes, is it? Sure. But like,
yeah.
In mono red, no.
Red? Well, there's a couple, but they always just kill you at the end of your next end step. They're great. I've actually died to that where Park was playing his Zadahedron Grinder deck, and he's like, man, I can't kill you all this turn, but that's okay. And then he played one of those mono red spells that says take an extra turn, you die at the end of its end step. And he's like, you're never going to see my end step because I'm going to kill you all. And then he killed us all. And I was like, I respect you so much because you gave everything you had and killed us all. I love it.
Yeah. I mean, I've played against this card in like my Jace deck before, and it's fucking awful because it just turns off the deck sometimes. And you're just like top decking and you're like, oh great, it's another island. And I don't have what I need right now. So this is one of those instances where bad deck building on my part because I didn't think, how would I deal with this?
Should have had a counterspell.
I run a ton, but yeah.
You're just bad.
Okay, thank you for that.
You're welcome. Yeah, I also really just honestly like half the reason I also love this card is because of the flavor text, which is I think honestly some of the best flavor text in the game of Magic, and it reads: the correct answer to a barbarian's riddle is to choke on your cleverness and die.
Great.
Yeah. Guy, go choke on your own cleverness and die.
I am very clever, so it'll be pretty easy to choke on myself.
Kinky. Alright, why don't you talk about your number 1?
Well, if you don't know what my number 1 is at this point, then
you're a fool.
You're a fool. It's Perforos, God of the Forge.
Holy shit.
And, I mean, if you knew anything about the way that I kind of stack my lists, I'd typically have whatever commander I run as my monocolor deck as the number 1 card. So, Perforos, to no one's surprise. He is 3 in a red, legendary enchantment creature, God. He's a 6/5 indestructible, and as long as your devotion to red is less than 5, Perforos isn't a creature. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Perforos deals 2 damage to each opponent. And then the ability that everyone always forgets about, and doesn't matter at all. I mean, personally, I've never used this other ability, but 2 in a red, creatures you control get +1. +0 until end of turn. So he gives all your creatures fire breathing. So, personally, in past episodes, I know that I've talked about how much I dislike red, but I have really come to love this deck. And between my green and my red deck, I feel like it just needed to take the amount of time between building my green deck and my red deck was a long amount of time. I'm glad that I finally did it. I had the list ready to go for like 6 months. And then I was like, you know what? Let's just do it. It's not that expensive. And this deck always has a huge impact when I play. It deals the most damage of any deck. Like, I have yet to come across a deck that I've played against personally that would deal more damage. I mean, maybe I find a more optimized version of Perforos, but he deals so much damage, and in a way, I'm just like the one who, if I lose, I mean, I get the people down to like single digit numbers. Like, I deal a lot of damage with this deck. 90% of the time, too, Perforos isn't a creature, so he's an indestructible enchantment, which is just so fucking hard to get rid of sometimes.
Not sometimes, always.
I mean, yeah. Like, I think the number one way, and this has probably happened a couple times, because once he's out, he's pretty much out. I don't need to cast him again. But, like, the number one way of getting rid of him, and from my experience, is like, what is it? Chaos Warp. Like, that's the one that ends up... I think Path to Exile works too, if I'm not mistaken. So long as Perforos isn't a creature, then you could also use Swords to Plowshare. But...
Well, how often... Let me ask you this, guy. Let me ask you this. Because I left... when I visited you, you hadn't made this deck. So I haven't played against it. How often does Perforos actually turn to a creature?
Since the strategy to my deck is to play spells to create tokens, his devotion never actually gets to the point. Like, maybe there's been like once or twice in the dozens of times that now that I've gotten to play him where he's turned into a creature. But like most of the time he's not even a creature because I'm using tokens to keep him as a indestructible enchantment.
Okay. Yeah, the Theros gods are really hard to get rid of, and that's actually like why, because you actually will see the Theros gods quite often, at least for me. And that's why whenever I run enchantment removal, I will have it be specifically exile. Because I'm so tired of like, exile is just better than destroy. I'll just say that. It's just a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, you go.
No, I'll also just say, like, I have died to this card, like, many times as the 99. It just kills me so often. Like, also, how does your, like, play group react when you play this deck? Like, what's the win rate for it? Because I haven't been around for it.
The win rate? It probably has the best win rate at the moment, but it's also played the least amount of games in comparison to my other decks, just because it's also my newest. It's about 50-50, where it either wins or it comes in like second or third place. And again, like, whether or not I actually win the game, it has the biggest impact on the board. Like, I'm dealing 20 damage bare minimum each game.
Okay. Each game? Okay.
So, 20 damage to each opponent, which is 60 damage if I have 3 opponents, 80 damage to 3 opponents, 4 opponents in a 5-player game. So, it's pretty impactful.
Seems pretty good to me.
Yes. Yes, it is. I'm glad that this is the one that I picked. It took a while, but I'm happy.
Didn't you order it drunk?
I ordered Perforos drunk. I didn't order the whole deck drunk.
Okay. I just wanted to ask. I thought you did.
No.
All right. Well, that brings our episode to a close. We hope you enjoyed us drunkenly ramble about our favorite mono red pet cards. Our series is over, so we're gonna have to figure out something else to do. But we did this because there's a couple episodes in the future that we're really looking forward to make that take a little bit of time. So we kind of did this in the meantime. And it
This
also
is
just
where we
feels
get
good
to
to, like,
slack off a little.
yeah. Yeah. So again, you can find us at Twitter. You can find us on YouTube. We'd love to hear from you and hopefully do a fan mail episode one of these days.
One of these days. Wizard Staff 101@gmail.com. Yeah, just send us an email. We have still yet to heard from any of you fuckers. Don't like not respond to us now that I called you a bunch of fuckers, but we still haven't heard from anyone. So we don't even know if you're real people.
They're probably not. All right. So thank you all for listening, and we'll see you all next time. Peace out.
All right, peace.